Well, hello everybody, it's Lucy from Art Shed Angel, and today I'm going to show you how to create this very cute little bird using your jelly plate and some acrylic paints and a few brushes. This is a great project, it's very, very easy, and it's another thing that you can do with your jelly plate. So let's get started. So firstly, if you like my videos, make sure you subscribe and click that bell so you see them when they come up. I do all sorts of mixed media projects. So I've got a little photo here of a bird that I like, and to start off with, I am going to put some jelly plate prints. So I am going to do a background using my jelly plate that I'm going to paint this little bird on. Now this bird is a very simple little painting, and I really just want writing and very simple things in the background. So I've just collected a few bits and pieces here to enhance the background. When you are using a jelly plate and you're using transfers, I have a video that you can watch which is about doing jelly plate transfers. I'll put the link in the description, but it's a good way of also creating backgrounds. Of course, don't put your pictures on top of your jelly plate, which I just did there. So I'm just using a square jelly plate. I'm not really concerned at this stage whether I cover the whole thing in one go. So I'm just going to do this patchy to start off with. I'm using Derivan paints, and the Derivan paints, there is a link in the description for 20% discount if you buy them from the Australian store. There will be a link for the store in the description. So I'm using their beautiful Australian leaf green here and some white paint, and I'm just rolling it on. This is just a background. We are not getting too worried about how it's looking. So I'm just putting it down, moving it around, filling the color. Now you could just brush the color in here, but I actually like my jelly plate because it gives me surprising backgrounds. So here I am just using the rest of the paint on my roller to create that background. And it's a bit like magic, the effects that we start to get. And what I'm doing first is adding my dark colors first, and then I'm going to add a lighter color over the top. So you can see here, I'm just adding a bit of texture, a bit of color, just to make it interesting. And I'm putting the paint straight onto the jelly plate, just rolling it out with my roller. And it works really, really well. Now here I'm just using a piece of rag, and I'm taking some of the paint off because I want this background to have lots of texture. So just keep covering it. The more that you put them around the surface, this is an A4 surface I'm working on, and it's acrylic paper, but the more you move it around, the more you get a nice sort of even look to your work. So keep doing a few layers. This is just very, very easy. And now I'm just going to use some phthalo blue, and I'm cleaning my roller off. What I'm going to do here is I'm going to use one of these prints. Now, I must say that this phthalo blue was probably not as dark as I would have liked. And you don't even need to do this part of the project, but I kind of like little things that when people look at my artwork, that they see tiny little things in the background. So I've changed now to a bit of cobalt blue with a can't even say it, phthalo green. And I'm just using some backgrounds. And some of this will be covered up, but I'm not worried. And usually I would lift my artwork and put it onto the jelly plate, but because I'm creating an artwork with my jelly plate, I'm doing it there. Now you can see there's writing in the background there now. And that's what I really, really like. I like that look that you've got something happening in the background, but people aren't really sure what that is. So I'm just adding more. This one wasn't too successful, but it got color down on the page, and that's all that really matters. You know, I think sometimes we spend way too much time worrying about, did it work out, didn't it work out? Just keep going. And when we keep going, this is when we have like little magic moments in our art. And I'm a real believer that you need to play with your art. to learn to really appreciate the product, know how it works. And my new thing for this year is making friends with your art. Now here I'm doing something that I really thought worked well. I'm actually making like boards of a fence. So I've used my sort of a rough brush, made it look a little bit like wood, and did little lines in it to kind of make planks. And when you see this, it actually looks like there are some planks in the background. So I'm doing this as like a little bit of a fence behind my bird, using some of my extra paint that I've got left over. And you can see here, all it is put your brush down through it, nice straight lines, back of the brush to create the boards, and then add it to the background. And you're probably looking at it going, it's kind of messy, and I'm just using up the ink on the background, and it's the basis for what I want to do. Now, when you looked at that bird, there was lots of pink in the background, and they were the pink flowers that you saw in the far distance. And what I'm going to do now is try to recreate them very subtly. So I'm putting some magenta down and some white, and I'm just going to use this little rag that I had, blot them together so that I end up with it mixing a little bit, but also some colours. So when I drop this now, you'll see that I end up with kind of pink, sort of halo-y background, and this is what's creating this look that there could be flowers behind, and you can sort of see the fence in the background, and I love how this is kind of coming together as I do it. You can see there I have a lot of paint on my fingers. Now when I look at my picture, it also had some yellow. Now I will put the picture up so that you can see it as well right now, but you'll see there's a bit of yellow in there too, so I'm using my jelly plate to put some yellow on. Now again, you might say, why didn't I just use a brush to add that yellow? But there was something really nice in being able to sort of use it as a solid color, and then it sort of running out as I placed it. So here we have the little bird, and the first thing I'm going to do is use some black and a bit of an ochre color, and I'm going to create the branch first to make sure that I have the bird where I want it to be. And I'm just basically doing it. Now honestly, when you're doing stuff like this, one of the things I really want you to think of is, did anybody see the picture before I see that? And I mean, I'm showing you the picture, but really, does anybody see your picture as well? So what I'm trying to do here is say to you that no one's going to see your original picture. So if your branch isn't exactly the right shape or it's a little bit different, don't worry about it. Just work with it. I'm now also going to put some extra flowers. So I'm going to put a bit of the magenta down, and with the white, I'm just going to brush some of those flowers in. And you can see here, I am not trying to create real flowers. I'm just giving a hint that there could be some petals there, because those are the ones in the foreground. And it's amazing how our brains understand when we see something that it could be something in our memory. So that's what's important about doing this and just letting it evolve a little bit. So now I'm going to add the bird, and I'm just going to do a big white patch in the center to do the bird. So I'm undercoating it so that I've got the shape. So just do the shape of the bird, pretty simple. And normally I would dry it before I go to the next stage, but in this case I was a little bit naughty and my acrylics did mix a little bit. But I'm going to use some blue in my grey. So whenever I do a grey in something, I usually add a little bit of blue or purple just to make it more interesting. So a grey that's just made out of black and white can be a little bit dull. And you can see here, I'm using a smaller brush and I'm tapping it on to give the sort of look of feathers. So just tapping it gently, filling in the colour and sort of making the shape. I'm not even worried if this bird doesn't look exactly like that bird, because again, who's seen both? So here I'm adding a little bit of vermilion into the ochre colour to do those lovely orangey ochre feathers that this little bird has on its belly and on its head. And just again tapping it with the brush so that I end up with feather effects. There's a little bit of a hint that they're feathers. You do not need to paint every feather in individually. And while I'm doing this, I'm just doing a bit of shading, doing a bit of colouring, looking at the shadows on this bird, looking at the dark areas. He really needs these wings to be a little bit darker so that he stands out from the background. And so I'm just darkening that, giving him some eyes and a beak. And he starts to appear. Needs some little legs too. So this is just the first layer, and normally I would let it dry. I actually did this video without letting it dry or without using a hairdryer. So I do suggest to you that you use a hairdryer approximately at this stage to make sure that you get it dry enough to keep working on the layers. But it is quite hot here today, so I didn't worry too much about it. Now I'm just lightening the background behind the bird ever so slightly with my brush because and adding some little highlights to those flowers. And I'm doing this because I felt like the bird wasn't standing out enough. So by lightening the background, I gave that contrast between the color of the bird and the actual background. And here I'm adding a little bit more of that vermilion to liven it up and make it just that little bit more interesting. So this is where you just start to play and add whatever you need. Again, I'm adding a little bit more blue to those feathers. And I think he's kind of working really quite nicely now. So just I'm not even trying to be hugely detailed. I'm finding that just so long as I have the shapes in there, the shapes make a difference. And I'm using the end of my brush just to drop some little white highlights here and there. Highlights bring life. So you can see there that all of a sudden there was a little bit of more life into the picture because I've put those white highlights on. So they're very important. When you paint, you must always think, what do I need to do to make this stand out more? And what I find is that people think they're finished, and I always say, just take another look. What else can I do? And again, I've lightened the background, and I've also looked at this and went, yeah, I can add a bit more color here and there. But that beautiful jelly plate background has been really lovely. I'm really adding highlights here so you can see the sun is hitting the tree. There's a little bit of more white in his body, and I've decided that the top of his head needs to be a little darker rather than lighter, and I think that works better. So you can see here, I don't always get it in one go. You need to sometimes say to yourself, okay, what can I do to make this little bird stand out more? And it sometimes just means just having a look. Do I need to add some shadows? Here I'm adding some yellow to his body, and that really does brighten up the picture quite some. It doesn't show up on the camera quite as much, but it looks, I'm pretty happy with how it's going. So it's time to sign it. Now, I did add a few more details to it after this video because I just slight details, and you'll see that in the final photo. So make sure you look at the final photo to see how that is. Make sure you subscribe to me. I'd love you to join my page more often. This is acrylics, Derivan acrylics, and I do classes. So if you want to join me for a class, that would be wonderful. Please make sure you join me on Facebook.